I'm Erick Erickson. It is December 9th in America. These are the four things you need to know this afternoon. Up first, the president is hitting the campaign trail this afternoon, starting in Pennsylvania. He's going to address affordability. Now, he's walked back to his statements from the other week that affordability is a scam. It's not actually what he meant. What he meant was that the Democrats talking about it was a scam. And in fact, he's going to insist that the Democrats caused the problem and he's fixing Joe Biden's economy. The Republicans are on defense now about affordability issues because Americans continue to say the cost of living is a big deal. And because they think it's a big deal, the Republicans now control everything and Americans don't think they fixed it. The president's got to convince them that he has. Susie Wiles in an interview said the president's going to be hot on the campaign trail, that he doesn't know it yet, but he's going to be campaigning like it's 2024. They're going to do their best to put him on the ballot. They think he's the best defender of his own goals. They should have him out there and exposed and get him talking about the issues and highlighting the Democrats. They think that'll resonate with people. Honestly, it's about the best thing the Republicans have as an opportunity to try to steer the message back away from the Democratic talking points. Up next, NVIDIA is going through an unusual arrangement to get its chips to China. They're going to send them from Taiwan to the United States for a security review. Then they'll send them to China. In addition, they'll pay the United States a 25% fee based on the money received from China. Now, some people are saying that looks like an export tax, and the Trump administration is trying to structure the deal to get around the issues of it being an export tax, bringing the chips here and then paying 25% when they go to China. That's prohibited by the Constitution, so they'll have to come up with some way to do this. Now, a lot of national security hawks in Washington are scratching their head over this. The U.S. Department of Justice has indicted several people for trying to sneak these chips into China. Now the president is willingly going to give them to China. A lot of outside experts say this will take our advantage in AI down from a 32-to-1 gap in calculation speed to a 1.3-to-1 gap. That's absurd because it'll put China on rather competitive footing very, very quickly with the United States. We actually lead China right now. They have more engineers, they've got more power output, but we have better chips and better capabilities, and we're going to hand them to the Chinese. That makes no sense. People in Washington are scratching their head wondering what's going on. At the end of the day, probably is about money. The president does not want to cause a collapse of NVIDIA's stock because NVIDIA right now is propping up so much of the stock market. If NVIDIA can't sell these chips to China, it's going to cause NVIDIA stock to go down, which is going to cause the stock market to go down at a time the president is insisting the economy is fine. Therefore, he's kind of backed himself into a corner. And unfortunately, to preserve the stock market, it looks like he's going to sell out American national security. Related to all of this in the president of the campaign trail, he's doubling down on tariffs, insisting in a Politico interview and elsewhere that they're helping the economy. But he also is noting that they are his major initiative to fix the economy beyond the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. That's a problem because it is the one major signature initiative Donald Trump did that no one else has any responsibility for. And Americans increasingly are turning sour on the economy, and that's the thing they can point to. Now, again, as I've mentioned before, it doesn't matter whether you think the tariffs are helping the economy or hurting the economy. I'm in the camp that they're hurting the economy and think the data bears that out. Some people, including the president, are in the camp that they're helping the economy. What matters is people's perception. And when the tariffs are the one big thing President Trump has done himself on the economy, people can point to the tariffs and say that's the thing that changed. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act preserved existing tax cuts. They didn't really make a lot of changes. Tariffs made a lot of changes. And now people feel like the economy is turned against them. So whether rightly or wrongly they blame the tariffs, they point to the tariffs as the one big thing that changed, and their lives have become upended. So that gives blame to the president. That's why the tariffs were a problem, beyond the fact that they make things worse. The National Defense Authorization Act is going to compel the Defense Department to turn over videos of boat strikes. This is a clear sign Republicans and Democrats alike are getting real frustrated with Pete Hegseth on Capitol Hill. In fact, they're not just demanding that these videos be turned over, they're also putting in restrictions on the president's ability to move troops around the world. In particular, there's growing concern among Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill that this White House is becoming hostile to the idea of American troops in Europe and would like to bring them home. It's been an idea articulated by J.D. Vance and others as they seek to undermine NATO. The National Defense Authorization Act would restrict the president's ability to do these sorts of things and upend our relationship with NATO. This is not a Democratic issue. This is a Republican issue. Republicans do not want to publicly break with the president on his national security plans, but they are going to use the National Defense Authorization Act to bind the president to laws that prevent and restrict his abilities to upend our relationship with Europeans on alliance issues related to NATO. I'm Erick Erickson. These are the 4 things you need to know this afternoon as the president hits the campaign trail to talk about how his policies are making American lives better at a time many of them don't think they are. It's going to be an interesting thing to watch. Be sure to stay informed and stay engaged, and above all else, always, please keep the faith.